大怪盗アルセーヌ・ルパンが残した不思議な宝物ルパンコレクションがギャングラーに奪われた。失ったものを取り戻すために戦う怪盗、世界の平和を守るために戦う警察、君はどっちを応援する？
Hello, and welcome to LupinRecap vs. PatReview, the podcast that's stirring up a storm. I am your host, Lokamasi, and with me is my co-host, Fefner Masamune. How you doing, Fefner?
I'm doing well. I'm here to talk about that Sentai.
How many times do you think I can do this intro before Imagine Me and you realizes I plagiarized it?
We just have to keep off the grid. And I think that's the second off the grid joke I've made in a row, so
It's our thing. You gotta make one the next episode, too.
It's because I'm very creative, not creatively bankrupt, you see.
It's because we're doing Gridman next. Foreshadowing. But today, we're talking about the second episode, Give Chase Global Police, or something similar to those words. It's translation, so it's not exact. So before we talk about the episode itself, I think we should cover something that, might be worth talking about that we didn't cover in the first episode. What attracts us to Sentai at all? We talked about this specific episode, but why do we ever care about Sentai? Like, I followed Toku GIFs long before I ever thought about watching a Sentai show. Well, for me, this is kind of a weird thing to say, but I really like its formalist nature. Mm-hmm. I should say, I said formalist, not formulaic. I like the way that things are called out, because I'm a Dragon Ball nerd. I appreciate when people say the name of their attack before they do it. I've always liked superheroes, and this is a neat take that the West doesn't really have on superheroes.
Yeah.
There's no real teams of superheroes that are more or less exactly the same.
Yeah, they are not synchronized in such a way, except in Power Rangers, but, that's just American Sentai.
That doesn't count. Exportations and adaptations do not count. I've also always liked the fight choreography, as evidenced by me following Toku GIFs, which is one part goofy scenarios and another part really cool fight scenes.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's goofy scenarios in fight scenes.
Yes. And I've already mentioned it, but there's no problem in reiterating. I just really like the nature of this specific show and how it's willing to stand out as much as it can from other Sentai.
Mm-hmm. So as for me, I believe last time I mentioned that I grew up with a whole lot of Mega Man, and man, Mega Man was just super into Sentai during the Game Boy Advance period, because you had your Mega Man battle networks, and they had all those style changes or soul changes, stuff like that, where you just got the cross ability, and you could take the abilities from another Navi, and Mega Man would get a cool redesign for it. And of course there's Mega Man ZX, which is, even more so. You basically have a henshin in those games. You pose and everything. So I guess a lot of the appeal for me, not really having seen them that much before this, is pretty much just cool costumes. Cool form changes are extremely my jam, and I love sort of the enhanced or changed abilities that come with them.
Yeah, I guess that goes for me too, even though I didn't think to say it. Just to continue the Dragon Ball references, all about those Super Saiyan forms.
Yeah, Sentai is basically just made to be extremely cool, and you know what? When it does it right, I mean, who can complain?
I forget which person tweeted this out or retweeted it, but somebody mentioned that if CinemaSins watched any tokusatsu show, they would spontaneously combust. Because it's all about looking cool, plot be damned.
Yep. So yeah, I believe you've mentioned before that sort of the way I steer when it comes to this is closer to Kamen Rider type stuff than it is Sentai.
Yeah, what you described with Mega Man is more like Kamen Rider stuff, because it's about a single person with one, sometimes multiple forms, whereas in Sentai, not occasionally, but if anyone gets new forms, it might just be the Red Ranger, and every other Ranger is stuck with their forms until the next season. All right, and with that little discussion out of the way, I think it's time to move on to the summary of today's episode. And as usual, Fafnir does all the heavy lifting here.
Alright, so we pick up where episode 1 left off, and the Pat Rangers waste no time starting a gunfight with the Lupin Rangers. The Pat Rangers seem to have the upper hand as they rush in and scatter the Lupin Rangers. Even as Red tries to drop a crate on Nigu, Nigu accidentally fires a blast from his hand, blowing the crate to smithereens just above his head.
I don't know if that was supposed to be a blast. I think that was just his fist.
Ah, so it's just a very powerful punch then.
Yes, and I love that his reaction isn't even, oh good, I didn't die, it's now I'm strong enough to defeat a Ganglar.
That was a real good punch, hell yeah.
The Pat Rangers are very single-minded.
So, even Garato gets in on the action as the fight goes on, despite his confusion over what's even happening. Dude just gets left like, what? Not 6? What?
I have no idea what's going on, but at least I can make it out alive. Hello, Mood.
I'm seeing double 6 Rangers. So, yeah, Garato not having a good time. At one point, Red accidentally shoots him in the butt while aiming for one of the Pat Rangers. It's a bad day for him. Can't say it's not deserved, but, bad day nonetheless.
I love that scene because it's a super dramatic zoom in on the bullet, and I think they're going to zoom in on, Ichigo's bullet, and then it just cuts to Garato getting shot in the ass.
Right to the butt. So, Ichigo nearly finishes Garato off, but Red knocks him into the ground, causing his shot to miss, due to the fact that he still has one of the Lupin collection pieces, and killing him would be bad.
This is one of the, I find, legitimate complaints about the show. No one talks to each other, and we don't know if it would be made easier or harder if they did.
Yeah.
Because Red is in no hurry to explain what is happening. He just says, you'll ruin the best part. That is so ambiguous. It sounds like you're aiding and abetting the Ganglar.
Yeah. We don't really know how much the Pat Rangers know about the Lupin collection. I mean, sure they have a safe in them, and that's fairly obvious in of itself, but you don't just automatically assume, oh yeah, there's treasure in there, it's super important. So, Red's interference allows Garato to escape with his life and the Lupin collection piece. Naturally, the Pat Rangers are mad, but the Lupin Rangers are really just annoyed. All 3 of them launch their Zords to make their escape, allowing the audience to see the blue and yellow vehicles. But the Pat Rangers waste no time launching their own Zords and following the thieves. Where the Lupin Rangers have aerial-based vehicles, the Pat Rangers have cars. Just really big cars, without hats.
And instead of having their names called out in a stuttering pattern, they have, mottos.
Yeah, Red's car is introduced with Thunderous Roar! 100 shots, 100 hits!
100 shots, 100 hits is Trigger Machine number 2.
Okay.
But that's 100 hits, 100 strikes because it's a gun. And then song goes, I forget exactly what it is, but I think it translates to Relentless Strikes.
Mm-hmm.
And you can hear it in the episode, but it's not subtitled.
Okay. We will probably see more of that in the future.
Oh, yes.
So after they get on chasing in their vehicles, we get to see the show's main intro, which you might want to skip the first time since it spoils a character who will appear in this episode. And it's really hard to miss him.
I should point out the reason Fafnir is making a specific note of that is because when we watched the episode together, I yelled, oh fuck, god damn it, I was wanting to see your reaction to him in the Zord.
I mean, in fairness, it was also pretty hilarious in the intro.
He's just really funny all around. I'm surprised I liked him as much as I did.
So, the Lupin Rangers scatter in order to escape the police, and naturally each Pat Ranger follows their equivalent on the other team. Ichigo follows Red, Nigo follows Yellow, and Sango follows Blue. So, Yellow's got a buzzsaw on her Zord, which she uses to block Nigo's path with a billboard. Nigo, beautiful soul that he is, panics until he accidentally activates the cannon in his car, blasting the board away.
I kind of referenced this in the last episode with the plane didn't fly in front of the camera and said, "Bye me kids." That's what they're doing right now.
Yeah, it's a good chase, but absolutely.
These are all features the toys have. With the dial fighters, you spin the dial until their battle mode activates. I forget the terminology. And for the trigger machines, you just pull the trigger.
Hence the name.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Sango activates her vehicle's power pull, which Blue is easily able to avoid before activating his Zord's machine gun.
Because it's a pull. She's trying to hit a plane with a pull.
I mean...
by retracting it and unretracting it. She's not even swinging it.
To be fair, if it actually hit him, he'd probably die. Just straight up dead.
Yeah.
So, elsewhere, Ichigo chases Red down the highway, also equipped with a machine gun. Thanks to Red's maneuverability, though, he forces Ichigo's Zord to a dead stop. But Ichigo has another trick up his sleeve as he activates his Zord's boost in an attempt to catch up with Red. As he nears the end of the highway, Sango and Nigo arrive to fire at the highway to create a ramp, launching Ichigo's Zord skyward. Ichigo then exits his vehicle while shouting, "I'm Pat Ranger Ichigo, Asaka Kaiichiro," and against all odds, he almost lands on the wing of Red Zord.
I love this scene so much. I should point out, the only note I have for this entire sequence is just "hell yes" in all capitals, and that's why I'm not doing the summaries.
So, yeah, it does not, however, take a lot of effort for Red to just swoop out of the way. Ichigo then falls into the sea, naturally shouting, "Damn you phantom thieves," as he lands in the water.
I'm glad that they really went all out in making you think he might at least get in the plane.
He did.
Because he has the
best.
dramatic ramp. They're playing one of the Power Rangers theme songs. It's their Henshin music. And the way they ended it is good, but I also would have appreciated if he'd gotten into the plane and Red just had to throw him out.
Either way, no matter what happened, Kaiichiro didn't really think this through. There's really nothing you can do at that point to really have any sort of advantage here.
I think Sakia and Tsukasa thought it through more because they had a plan and enacted that plan.
But also,
Ichigo was just
they kind of went
moving
along with his dumb plan.
Right.
He's just gonna want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just let Boss do his thing. It's not gonna work.
But I do like, during this amazing chase, that the Lupin Rangers do not work together at all.
Nope.
And the Pot Rangers do come together at the end.
Yeah.
It's really obvious, but it's really good to have those sorts of themes be pervasive through a work.
Mm-hmm.
And not just matter when the plot demands that it matters.
Yeah, it clearly shows their dynamic despite the fact that the Phantom Thieves are pretty much in control for the entire thing.
Mm-hmm. Also, this is exactly the sort of Zord content I want. Megazords are cool, but you know what I need? I need the individual Zords fighting. Give it to me, Toei. Stop jerking me around and have this happen every episode.
So, Ichigo watches as the other two Lupin Rangers join their partner, and they all zoom into the distance. Back at the restaurant, the Phantom Thieves are still sore about their ruined heist, and wonder why the police were using versus changers. Umeka just drops the central conceit of the show by mentioning how cool it is that everyone transforms using the same items, but the two groups are cops and robbers.
That might be the most, I'm blanking on the word, but the most dissociating moment of her character being the Kid Appeal character. She may as well have been facing into the camera while delivering that line. It's really weird, because they're usually not that bad about it.
Yeah, but here in episode 2 it's just man, isn't this concept cool? Wink.
What do you think, 12-year-olds? Or 8-year-olds? I forget, this actually skews really young.
So we then get a moment of angst in which Kairi and Tuma proclaim that they have to be the ones to take down the Ganglars, and it's not enough to only take the collection pieces. We leave that scene without further explanation as Kairi returns to the docks where they had fought Garado. The police have set up a table at the crime scene where they're returning the stolen jewelry that Garado had stolen. The citizens are thankful, but Kaiichiro expresses remorse over not doing enough for them. It's not merely enough to return their stolen possessions. He also promises to defeat the criminal who burned their shops and houses. Then he leaves. There's some other cop in the background there, but I would have thought Kaiichiro would have, had a little more to do on the scene. Oh well.
He went to the back to go get more stuff to hand out, I think.
He was just too dramatic. He needed to cool down.
Mm-hmm.
So, the sad music from that scene continues playing as we cut over to a young couple leaving a clothing store, passing by Tuma, who has a sad expression on his face. Umika is standing in a mall in a similar mood. We then see Kairi in an alley, where we cut to a flashback. Kairi is being followed by his brother, who he then shoves into a pile of garbage, and as Kairi returns to the street, a man in a very distinct hat passes by him, whistling ominously. A few seconds later, Kairi's brother screams. Kairi, somewhat nonchalantly, walks back to the alleyway, finding his brother encased in ice. In a panic, Kairi stumbles towards the stalagmite, but as he approaches, it explodes. No trace of Kairi's brother remains, save the shards and dust of ice he was sealed in. So, I mean, it's definitely done in a fairly cartoony way, but, that's kinda gruesome.
It's so cartoony that it loops back around to being horrible.
Yeah.
And it makes me super uncomfortable, and I hate it.
He is super dead.
When I first saw this episode, I thought, oh, so they're going to be frozen, and they're safe, but there's no way to get them out. And then they shattered, and so did my heart.
Yep. Kairi's brother is just straight up dead. Episode 1, we imply organs are being harvested. Here, no, on-screen death.
And it's not just, like, backstory death, because that happens, like, all the time, even in Power Rangers. It's, like, on-screen backstory death.
Yep. So, as we leave Kairi having a breakdown, we shift focus to Tuma having found a similar scene in the park. But here, there's several people trapped in ice, including one particular woman, who Tuma reacts in horror to. The camera cuts to a ring on her finger, which is then obscured by a crack in the ice. Just as we hear the ice breaking in the park, the scene then switches to the mall where we see Umiko. She too is looking at someone in a chunk of ice who she refers to as Shiho-chin. And just as a side note, I did a quick search, and the chin suffix is apparently just a variant of, like, chan. So,
Oh, okay.
basically, we know that Umiko lost a friend, and that Kairi lost his brother. Older brother, rather, because he says Aniki.
And we know he says Aniki.
Yeah.
Because our fan sub let us down.
However, we're not actually told of Tuma's relationship to the person he saw shatter, but given his reaction, they were close enough for that to be more gutting than it would be to see a stranger explode. Because
Also, we're not told, but this happened outside of a wedding boutique, and it zoomed in on a ring.
yeah,
I don't think it's a spoiler to say that's his fiancée.
yeah, it does not out and out say it just yet, but just full disclosure, I have seen episode 3, but none of the ones after. So, yeah, you know.
Yeah, so it's not even a spoiler for Fefner.
Yeah.
But I feel like, I hate going down this road of like, well, it's not technically a spoiler, but I really do feel like we can safely say this is...
Yeah, it's real
If
obvious.
we were doing this as these episodes came out, I would absolutely be saying this was his fiancée.
Yeah, because they make it obvious, they just don't have to say it with words. Probably due to the fact that his is super tragic.
Oh, yeah. And before we move on, I just want to point out something I kind of noticed in the way these scenes are shot and how they display grief. I feel like you could use this to demonstrate like 3 different kinds of acting, because we have Kairi's reaction, which like he contorts and convulses and he does all of the acting stuff, but the thing that stands out is his horrible, horrible cry of anguish.
Yeah.
It is super uncomfortable and I don't like listening to it, which is why I'm putting it in the podcast right now. If I had to suffer, so do you. With Toma, the sound actually cuts out when he reacts, and we just zoom in on his face.
Yep.
Which stands out a lot because Toma's face doesn't move a whole lot outside of this scene.
Yeah, you only need a second of that to get it.
And I really liked Umika's because, like, I don't mean to imply that her voice acting or her facial expressions are bad, but she really sells it in just the way she, like, collapses after all the ice shatters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, normally she's, super cheery, but clearly not here. So, yes.
So you have voice acting, facial expressions, and body movements, both three important parts of acting, and I feel like if you needed a good example of those from the same show, this would be a good scene to show.
Mm-hmm. So, as Umiko falls to her knees when Shiho explodes, we hear a familiar whistle and see the figure from before, this time in Ganglar form. So, I noticed that...
But Fafnir, we don't see it transform. How do we know?
It's the hat.
I'm preempting complaints about us calling out Toma's fiance.
I did notice one thing. Umiko probably got the best look at him, because Kairi passed by the dude before his brother was killed, but he didn't really seem to pay attention to him. Tuma didn't see him at all. Umiko actually seems to look at him. She is across the room, but we do get that shot.
Oh, yeah.
So, we then cut back to Kairi, still alone in the alley, looking at the spot where his brother fucking died. A car pulled...
At night.
Yeah, he's probably been there all day.
That scene, the first scene took place at like 6 in the morning. The sun had just came out, and this is 5 a.m. the next day, as far as I'm concerned.
So, a car pulls up behind him, and Kogure approaches, mentioning the Ganglars were behind the incident. He then tells Kairi that there is a way to grant his wish.
And Kairi immediately assaults him.
He hands him the Versus Changer before we cut to a similar scene with Tuma, and then one with Umiko. He then tells...
And those scenes... I'm sorry, those scenes, Toma's is also at night, but he's in a different place, and it's hard to tell how much time has passed at Umiko's location because she's indoors. But the implication is that Kairi did not move for like a day, whereas Toma and Umika either were capable of moving or were caught so quickly that they didn't even have a chance to have that kind of freak out.
He tells the three that the hidden power of the Lupin collection can grant any wish, including bringing back the dead. The three then meet in the restaurant, where they swear to gather the Lupin collection to bring back their loved ones, no matter the cost. So that's a little more insight into their whole promise.
I want to draw attention to the exact language in the fansub that we used. Toma says, even if one of us falls, it'll be okay so long as our wishes are granted. That implies that they wouldn't revive each other. They would revive the dead person's loved ones and they just leave the person dead. And I feel like that promise is meant to indicate that that's what they want. Like if Kairi dies and it's like, oh, you can bring back both me and my brother, that's good. But if you can only bring back one, please, for the love of God, bring back my brother.
Yeah. We aren't told the exact details about the wish at this point, but yeah, considering the language, that might be the case. So, as we return to the present, we see all three Lupin Rangers with their Versus Changers, before we get a hard cut to Grotto, who is now extremely mad.
Sad time is over.
Mad time.
It's time for fighting.
So, he intends to plunder the whole city, though from the looks of things, he's just going to blow it up.
Surprisingly enough, his Lupin collection piece is not called Disco Inferno.
If only. But yeah, at this point, there are just huge columns of flames. He very mad. So, both teams are alerted to his presence, but the Lupin Rangers make it to the scene first. Which is really impressive because they've already changed into their disguises?
And that doesn't have, like, a quick change thing other than just, like, real-life quick change things you can do. They're just that good at changing outfits.
Yeah, they must have just had those on them, because it doesn't seem like much time has passed for Grotto. He's in the same spot. So, anyway, the Lupin Rangers then Kaito change immediately, and proceed to dominate the battle. Grotto tries, but at this point, he's not really much of a challenge for them. Even when he attempts to use his other two arms, Blue and Yellow leap behind them, and then use that little grabby arm that's apparently on the ends of their swords, and they restrain him for enough time for Red to input the safe's code, which is 215. Oh, sorry, 215! I need to exclaim it like that.
That guy they have doing the announcement rules.
I love him so much.
He doesn't do all of the VS changer sounds, but he does a lot of them, and they're all great.
He puts so much energy into them. A good announcer always really helps. Just look at Sonic Colors. Everyone loves those jump sound effects and the wisp power-ups. But anyway, just as Reb nabs the lighter Lupin collection piece, the cops arrive on the scene. So, do you at least know what the lighter's actually called then?
Oh, I believe I talked about it in the last episode. Alamois, Turn Me On.
Alright.
I referenced any number of songs. And there was a Nicki Minaj song that came out kind of recently that it technically might have been, but probably wasn't.
Yeah, I do remember that, but, figured we might as well bring it up now, because, Garado doesn't have it anymore. It ain't his.
That too.
So, then we actually get the, full Kaisatsu change, since we got the abbreviated one in the first episode.
But the Lupin Rangers don't have their abbreviated transformation.
They do.
In this episode, they still get a full... I think it all happens at once on the same screen, but they still get the full transformation sequence.
Yeah.
It's not as condensed as the Pat Rangers was in the last episode.
Yeah, because the Lupin Rangers have 3 segments. It's just in this one you see them putting on their costumes at the same time. But then we get the individual, posing next to their wanted posters. And then, of course, the rooftop. Mm-hmm. And it's all important.
Mm-hmm.
So, after the Kaisatsu change, everyone's just suddenly fighting mooks. I think the commercial break might have skipped something, but they might have just decided to cut to the chase.
Yeah, the video we used, the logo cuts in, so we can assume there was a commercial break, but it's super jarring.
Yeah.
And not the sort of thing that modern shows really do anymore. Because modern shows know you're going to watch this without commercials at some point.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's more of a Western thing. I don't know what Japan has going on in terms of commercials.
Also, I want to point out the VS chargers and the VS vehicles are all toys you can buy, and the sounds they make are incredibly accurate to the show. To the point where when the Lupin Rangers do their Kaito change this episode, you can hear like a female chorus saying, "Lupin Ranger," and that's what the toy does. When you start Kaito change and don't finish it for a while. I thought that was added for the toy, but no, it's from this episode.
Alright, so, during the Mook fight, the Lupin Rangers and Pot Rangers also sometimes fight each other. Most importantly, Blue takes a shot in the shoulder from Ichigo during the fight, and Red rushes over to him and brings him out of the fight. Blue's still rowdy, but either due to worry for his friend and or some basic respect for Kaichiro, Red goes back on what he says earlier and just leaves good enough alone. He's got the collection piece, they can leave.
I feel like there's a lot to take apart in this scene despite how little actually happens. We're already setting up Toma's character trait that flies in the face of his already established character trait.
Yeah, he's aggro.
Like, we know he's the stoic. We know he doesn't react for most things. But when it comes to killing Ganglars, you cannot stop him.
Or cops.
Like, I believe you mentioned in the last episode, Toma never really reined in Kairi like Tsukasa reined in Keiichiro. It's because Kairi has to rein in Toma.
Yep.
The phrase "has no chill" gets thrown around a lot, and I think it's misused because it's supposed to describe someone who, even when they seem calm, isn't really calm.
Yeah.
Like, Keiichiro isn't the person with no chill, because he has chill, and you just tell, this is really noticeable when he doesn't have it. Toma has no chill.
Yeah.
I also like the implications of the way the team works. I don't necessarily think they're falling in line with Kairi. I think it's just a democratic vote.
Yep.
And it just swung from, 2-1 to 1-2.
Yeah, because Yellow's just like, oh, what? Everyone's over there? Okay. Don't leave me behind.
I also just love him physically picking up Blue and grappling away.
Yeah.
He knows he can't just say, "Hey, we're going." He has to pick him up and drag him away.
But yeah, just to note as well, Red does have a brief flashback to seeing Kaiichiro at the docks when he's doing his whole speech, so that's probably where the basic respect comes in.
Here's another thing I think is important to understanding Kairi's character, maybe. He has a real reason and doesn't say it. The real reason is he respects Keiichiro's dedication to uphold a promise he made, But he just says, oh, we have the Lupin collection, that's enough, which completely contradicts how he was acting earlier and does not make him trustworthy. It's like, he's lying.
Yep.
The audience knows the real reason, but the other Lupin Rangers don't.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't just say, hey, I respect that cop a little bit. I'll dunk on him, but, like, I don't know.
But they all have a promise in common, so if Kyrie just said, like, Keiichiro made a promise and I want to let him fulfill it, they probably would have calmed down a bit.
Well, I mean, one of them.
And I'm not, like... Yeah, I'm not lambasting Kyrie or saying this is bad writing. I think it's really good writing, actually. It's just... Kyrie's making mistakes here, and I want to make sure we're all aware of that.
Yep.
Talk to your friends. Be honest. Be open. Jesus Christ, people.
So, with the collection piece in hand, the Lupin Rangers make their escape. Though, of course, Blue does that whole thing where he remains to glare for a moment before leaving.
I'm surprised he didn't, like, make the throat slit motion. Or just, like, a thumbs down or something.
Just so you know, I'm still mad. So 2 of the Pat Rangers move to chase them, but Ichigo stops them, knowing that Garato is more dangerous at the moment. All 3 of them then bring out megaphones, which they use to stop the mooks in their tracks and order them into a neat little formation. Then they use their Pat Megaboo, which is just a baton, and then proceed to beat all of them into submission. It probably wasn't on purpose.
Murder them! They're dead!
It probably wasn't on purpose, but one of the Pat Rangers' abilities involving taking down unresisting opponents is probably the most fitting thing they could have done for the cop-based team.
I'm not gonna lie, that article about how the police are portrayed in Spider-Man came out, and it made me rethink this whole podcast. I don't know if I want to say nice things about fictional cops anymore, but I'll keep doing it.
So, Garato, still mad of course, charges the Pat Rangers. Now, Garato is already having a bad day, but he's now lost his fire powers, so the only thing he has going for him is extra arms. Things don't go well for Garato.
He gets some use out of them. They don't restrain his arms. Ichigo just fucking tanks them.
We take a brief look at the Lupin Rangers, who are nearby and still watching the fight, but allowing the Pat Rangers to do the heavy lifting. The Pat Rangers then corner Garato and prepare to finish him off. Nigo then suggests that they use another Lupin collection piece for their attack, which he hands to Ichigo. Of course, we see the Lupin Rangers react to this with further annoyance as Ichigo attaches the thing to his versus changer. We then hear the name of this piece, Good Striker, which is basically the best name. It's less of a good finishing move, though, at least for the Pat Rangers. All 3 of them fuse into one being, Pat Ranger Ugo.
And I'll just point out, Yugo is Japanese for fusion. And there's like a kind of a pun, because the Lupin Rangers all react with like, Ugo, which could mean they're repeating the name they heard, or they're saying fusion. Japanese seems like a stressful language to know.
Yeah. So, Ugo then uses One Hit Strike, which is a charged-up gunshot that leaves waves as it travels. True to the name, Garato is blown to smithereens in a single shot. As the dust settles, all 3 Pat Rangers realize the existential horror of inhabiting the same body and just start freaking out.
This is the most absolute buck wild thing that happens this episode, I think. The idea that they know this is their finishing move but don't know what it does at all? Who was supposed to brief them? Hilltop, what are you doing? Tell your people what they're supposed to know.
No one can control Good Striker. So anyway, we see Dogranio back at his mansion, telling his minions to give the young upstart another chance. Gauche obliges and leaves. Back at the scene of the fight, the Pat Rangers continue panicking and arguing with one another within a single body. Although probably a deeply scarring event for the cops, the Lupin Rangers watch and laugh at their plight. The laugh overs quickly, though, as Gauche enters the stage. She then takes one treasure and switches it with another one in her vaults. Her new treasure allows her to nurse Garato back to health. Garato is not only brought back to life, but also enlarged.
I'll point out the name of this Lupin collection piece is probably pronounced Le Gros Calibre, which means get big. that is apparently a song. Never heard it before, and did not decide to listen to it in preparation of this podcast.
Well, we'll have plenty more times to bring it up, because, of course, even not having seen Sentai, I do know this is a thing. You have to have the one character that makes the other monsters big.
Because we paid money for that suit. We gotta use it.
It is also worth noting that Ghosh is the first person we've seen using 2 different Lupin collection pieces, at least in terms of the Ganglars.
It's also interesting to note that they don't work when you're just holding them. You have to put them in the safe first.
Yeah, we don't know what the other one does, but she was keeping that in there for the time being. So, night falls over the city as the Lupin Rangers take it upon themselves to fight the now gigantic Garato. Using their Zords, they attempt to close in, but Grotto fires several missiles, keeping them at bay.
Say, by deciding to take charge, you mean Toma rushes off and Umika doesn't want him to die, and then Kairi doesn't want both of them to die. So really, Toma unilaterally decided to fight this thing, and everyone just went, well, fine.
One person took it upon himself, and then the rest followed. So, Pat Ranger Ugo watches the fight from a distance when Good Striker reveals itself to be sentient. He leaves, although the Pat Rangers don't yet separate. Good Striker follows along the other Zords, telling the Lupin Rangers he'll help them out. The Lupin Rangers are surprisingly okay with this. They are just super chill. They're like, oh, okay.
It's Kairi. Of course he's just like, yeah, whatever, I'll do it. I'm down for whatever.
So, Good Striker then initiates Kaito Gatime, which combines the Lupin Rangers' vehicles with himself. Good Striker forms the body and the legs, blue and yellow form the arms, and red forms the head. Garato is taken aback as the Lupin Kaiser is formed. Meanwhile, the Pat Rangers are relieved as their transformation finally runs out and they're separated again. Never again will they do the fusion dance. It was horrible for everyone. That includes you. So, within the Lupin Kaiser, the Lupin Rangers are impressed with their new big robot. Then Good Striker's true form emerges from a panel.
Before we talk about Good Striker, and I do want to talk about Good Striker, I want to say I love the way they do all the mechanical stuff with this Megazord. I like how they have to pull their control panels back to shift them. I like how they have to move through the body of the thing to get to the control center. And I like how they have the shot of like them looking out through the hole, I guess, that's just there if the face isn't there at the monster. I don't think it's a screen, I think it's just a hole.
It'll be a screen eventually. So, Good Striker, of course, is the character I mentioned in the intro.
It's horrible grumbling.
Yeah, so I can see how seeing Good Striker pop out of nowhere could be just as surprising to the audience as it is for the Lupin Rangers.
And he has a little top hat, too.
Yeah, so, like...
He's a carrot with bat wings and a top hat. I love him.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, from the intro, I could not tell what he was, and I still can't. He's just...
He's a plush toy.
Edgiest
gotta sell
carrot.
toys.
He's got angry eyes and one of those little sharp teeth slasher smiles, and there's a gem in his forehead?
And somehow, he just ends up looking really cute. He's not edgy at all. His name is Good Striker. He is the least edgy character, I think.
He's a good boy. So yeah, he's got the bat wings, and of course he's wearing a hat, but like, honestly, that's the most normal thing here? Like, they put hats on the Zords, or the Lupin Zords, rather, so like, yeah,
He's got to be on theme.
Yeah, so...
He needs to have a top hat. What is a phantom thief? A gentleman thief without a top hat?
Yeah, so he's got the top hat, and, you know, I played Mario Odyssey, so like, hats in weird places don't really faze me anymore, I guess. Oh, and also, Good Striker has a little jacket. Also, he does seem to be stuck in the panel. There's like a little Pez dispenser body beneath him. So anyway, enough about Good Striker. Somehow the Lupin Rangers aren't really that bothered by the fact that Good Striker is the most bizarre chimera the world has ever known. They're just like, oh, he came out of nowhere, weird. Anyway, you're gonna help us fight? Alright. So, Garado fires another volley of missiles, which Lupin Kaiser handily avoids. Thousands are probably killed in the ensuing explosions and gunfire, but let's not focus on that.
This fight has a lot of CG in it, and I think that is a great decision for this mech because this mech does not stand still for anything.
Yep, nope, it keeps moving, and, if you move fast enough, it doesn't matter what the quality of your CG is. That's using it to your
Everything
advantage.
looks great in animation. Gotta get those CG smear frames. I also want to point out that it has its theme playing, but it's not the vocal version.
Yeah.
It'll make sense why I'm pointing this out in the next episode.
So, Lupin Kaiser at one point fires some kind of energy buzzsaw which travels all the way to Garado, stunning him for long enough for the Lupin Kaiser to close in. They break his defense and leap into the sky. All three Rangers stand up and aim their guns at their screen. And when they fire, Lupin Kaiser brings out a giant energy Gatling gun to use its finishing move, Good Striker Rapid Fire Defeating Shot.
I also want to point out, as they are aiming and charging their shot, Goody is just kind of vibrating. Just going...
He's helping.
I think he's doing everything, actually.
So, Garado explodes for a second time, as the Lupin Rangers bid him adieu and fly away. The Pat Rangers watch, a little disappointed that the thieves stole their thunder. But Ichigo, in a rare moment of not mad, decides that one less Ganglar harassing the world is a good enough victory for the day.
Since I pointed out Kairi's character moment, I want to point out Keishiro's here because Keishiro was not as instantly beloved as Kairi was, as I pointed out in the last episode. I think it's important to point out his reaction here because it shows that despite his intensity in the first episode, it's not just the fact that the Lupin Rangers exist that he's mad.
Yeah.
He was mad about not being able to do anything.
Yep.
And now that he knows that theoretically he can take down a Ganglar, finally, for real this time, he feels better about everything in his life now.
But thankfully, he's still mad about some things, because really, I wouldn't like him as much if he weren't mad. So, back at it again at the restaurant, the thieves are in high spirits after getting not only one, but two collection pieces, and one from the police, no less. Umeka decides that Good Striker is too long a name and nicknames him Goody instead. Just as the Rangers discuss how to steal the Versus Changers from the cops, we see Kaichiro, Tsukasa, and Sakuya approach the restaurant. Umeka is only barely able to hide Goody away as the cops enter. Kairi wonders if they've been figured out, and the episode ends.
That it does.
So...
I guess we can talk about this cliffhanger. I mentioned the reason we watched these two episodes back to back is because these cliffhangers get to me too much, and despite knowing what happens, I just immediately wanted to watch the next episode again.
Yeah.
So
I
we did.
kind of figured where it would head. I won't mention that now, but yeah. Even still, like, this is apparently like one of the only cliffhangers we're going to see, really.
I won't say it's the only, but I will say cliffhangers aren't common.
Yeah, I figured there'll be some later on, but yeah, it's usually episode by episode storylines, that sort of thing. But they've got a lot of establishing to do in these first three episodes, so it's understandable.
And even then, the next episode is mostly standalone. It's just...
Yeah. Well, it's important. It is important because, like, we do have a certain dynamic here. We had to introduce the Pat Rangers properly. We had to have these Zords all fight. Then we had to have the Pat Rangers actually fight a Ganglar, because we haven't seen that yet. And then we got Lupin Kaiser, and episode 3 is going to have sort of a similar dynamic.
So you've seen what Good Striker does to the Pat Rangers and the Dial Fighters, but we don't know what he does to the Lupin Rangers or the Trigger Machines. So it does finish like the establishing of the mechanics, but it's less story connected than the first two episodes are.
Yeah.
And with that is the recap done. So now I have a few points here that I'd like to talk about. We We did our run-through of all the characters, all the Rangers, last episode, but I forgot to talk about the Ganglars, and I think they're worth talking about, especially now.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least the three important ones.
Yep.
The three named ones that we know of so far.
Yep. And Garato, he's also here.
And Garato. I'm not talking about Garato. First, I want to talk about Gauche.
Yep.
Because Gauche is the only good parody of Sexy Designs.
Yep.
That's it. She's the only one. Every other one is either, like, not a parody or just mean to people with certain body types.
Yep.
No one has exposed ammo belts or boobs made of bone.
Yeah. I can definitely see that. And yeah, it's really not overly grating, and I didn't see it that way at all because, you know, that is actually like a really good monster design.
Mm-hmm. It's not... I don't know if there are any shots that really focus on it, but she is, like, wearing a backless and midriff-bearing dress. But it's really hard to tell because instead of having a back or a midriff, she just has those ammo belts.
Yep.
That you can see through. It's clearly a send-up of Sexy Designs without being sexy at all, in a way that's not mean.
Mm-hmm.
And we can all stop trying to do that because they did it right and they're never going to do it right again.
Yep. It's probably sexy design for Ganglars, but, like, they're terrible monstrosities. They have different tastes. And, of course, now it's even more worth bringing up Gauche because, God, her entrance is amazing.
I love the effects of her, like, breaking reality. I love her theme music.
Yep, it's a lyrical theme, by the way.
It's great, but I don't know if it's intelligible.
Yeah.
We went into her character a bit in the last episode, and I don't think we've seen enough to say anything new about her.
I do think it's interesting that, like, she's, like, obviously we mentioned last time, the fact that she's the left hand I think is going to be pretty important. She's the more of a suck-up, and I'm gonna guess she has ulterior motives, just gonna say that now. However, she's also the one who's going to be in charge of making the monsters big now.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to Destra, who seems, you know, more stalwart and loyal. We don't...
Of course, the obvious implications here being that why didn't Roulette Frog get a second chance?
Because no one likes Roulette Frog.
It's, like, very jarring because there are, like, instances that will make you think of, like, okay, this person gets a second chance, but Roulette Frog doesn't?
Yeah. No one liked him. He cheated even other Ganglars.
But,
it would have been very bad had he been big at that point, of course. Because Good Striker was not in the mix.
Oh yeah, that would have been the end.
Yep. It's just...
Get on this, Gauche.
Just one of those instances where, I guess, if Gauche were in town, maybe she was on vacation, they had not yet begun to party at Dogranio's mansion.
That's Gauche. I think she's a pretty good send-up of that character archetype from Sentai and Power Rangers. Mm-hmm. And we can move on to Destra, who is also... It's less obvious with him being a send-up of right-hand bad guys in Sentai, but just the way that he talks, he's very clearly filling that archetype as about as hard as you possibly can.
Yep.
But I did want to point out something that I forgot to mention in the first episode. He is a reference to a specific type of Sentai monster.
Oh.
In Aba Ranger, which was Power Rangerized as Power Rangers Dino Thunder, the monsters were called Trinoids, and they all had a plant, an animal, and an object that were like mashed together to create them.
All right.
And Destra is made of a watermelon, a turtle, and a hand grenade. And I don't know if he is supposed to evoke the Trinoids just to be like, hey, remember Trinoids? They were cool. Because it's sort of a good way for me to say, people who know more about Sentai have pointed out that a lot of the Ganglars are redecos of old Monsters of the Week. Not just recolors, like some will be like, we took the bottom half of one monster and then made a new top half. The Ganglars are very disparate in their designs.
That makes sense, because, like, the Lupin collection pieces are also kind of callbacks, as you've been saying.
I should point out Power Rangers is 2 years away from its 30th anniversary. So if it doesn't do Lupin next and holds off on a year, they will have the perfect 30-year anniversary show.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, the question is whoever in charge of Power Rangers, like, do they care enough to do that?
I don't know. I forget who has it now. It's bounced between... It started with Saban, and then it went to Disney, and then I think it went back to Saban, and then Saban lost it again? I can't really remember.
Saban's couch has it now.
Yeah, there's less to say about Destro because his design is not like a perfect example of how to do something right that everyone gets wrong. It's just a neat callback to other Sentai.
Yeah, and he doesn't really do much this episode either.
And we've already kind of touched on this, but I want to talk again about DeGranio's really great personality.
Yep.
Like, his design, I don't know if it's a reference to other Sentai. I don't know if it's supposed to be, like, a parody of anything. But his personality is great because he is the opposite of every, like, this type of villain.
He is so nonchalant.
He is not the person who's going to say, like, you have failed me. He gives him second chances.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, come on.
This is the opposite of Darth Vader in Empire Strikes Back.
Garado did his best. Come on. Bring him back. Make him big. He just does not give a shit. He just wants to see one of the Ganglars just do a cool thing and not be blown to smithereens.
So, yeah, the Ganglars are pretty interesting so far.
And I mean, we probably should talk about Garado a little, since we didn't talk about him last time, and he is dead now.
What is there really to talk about, though?
That is the problem. He's kind of entertaining in that, like, after his initial fight in which he was a legitimate threat, he never really gains ground again.
Yeah, because the only reason he had any, like, ground to stand on in that fight was because he was able to surprise people.
Yeah.
And then cat's out of the bag, and you can't put it back in.
Yep.
You can't surprise them with forearms anymore. But even people who don't know about it, like the Power Rangers, it doesn't work on them either.
Yeah, they don't really
He
care.
punches Geisha with all four arms, and it doesn't matter because Geisha has stronger armor.
Yep. Yeah, and then at that point he doesn't have the fire, so he can't use that against the Pat Rangers. It's all just one bad day. That being said, I think big form, like the missiles, are okay. I can see why they had to, maybe change his power a little bit, because his base power being arms wouldn't have been threatening. And also, you couldn't just give him back, like, an equivalent of the fire powers, because then he'd just burn the city.
And it would defeat the purpose of having a Lupin collection piece.
Yeah.
If you just do that anyways.
So, he kind of just has to have missiles.
Now, we're not entirely done talking about the Ganglars, but I want to get to the next Ganglar by way of the Lupin Rangers. We've not seen a whole lot of it yet, but I'm going to say right now, Lupin Rangers don't just have a sad backstory, they are actively traumatized.
Yeah.
These are not people that are like, oh, something sad happened in the past, but I've, learned to live with it. I don't want to just say like, oh, I'm better now, but like, I've learned to live with it and I've grown and it doesn't affect me anymore. They're still super affected by what happened.
Yeah, that'll happen when you see your loved ones explode in front of you.
And the show, I don't know how much they're trying to address this, but really Kogure is standing in the way of their recovery process. Because so long as their loved ones can be brought back, they're not really dead, so there's no sense in them trying to move on from it.
Yeah.
I think the only one that may have even tried is Umika, because she's not as gung-ho about killing Ganglars.
Yeah.
Really, I think it's not an accident that in the opening shot, the Lupin Rangers are the ones frozen in ice.
Yep.
Because they I joked earlier about Kyrie not leaving that alleyway. Like, I think he's still there, really.
Yep.
He just pretends that he's not. And we'll see more of that, but I just had to say it now. These... You've heard of teenagers with attitude? Get ready for young adults with depression. It's Power Rangers now. I also wanted to talk a bit about... Actually, before I move on, do you have anything else to add?
I don't think so, no.
Because I don't want to just talk at you for 10 minutes. But I wanted to draw attention to that specific Ganglar's attack on the 3 Lupin Rangers. Because Toma gets there in the aftermath of the attack, so he never really encountered the Ganglar. Mm-hmm. Umika sees the Ganglar, but the Ganglar doesn't really see her, and it's reasonable to assume that, like, he just didn't know she was there, or knew at some point and thought he killed her. And then there's Kyrie, who walks right past him. They saw each other. That Ganglar saw Kyrie, ignored him, and then murdered his brother. Mm-hmm. I just want to make sure people are aware of that, because I have theories and I'm laying the groundwork for them.
Yeah.
But we can also already see how, like, the show is already laying the groundwork for, like, differentiating the trauma that the 3 Lupin Rangers had. Mm-hmm. Because we can already guess that Kyrie is going to have some really, really horrible survivor's guilt.
Yep.
Because not only did he say a terrible thing to his brother, the thing that killed his brother walked right past him and didn't even touch him.
Yeah, and I also think it's interesting that, like, despite his brother screaming, like, he didn't really rush off to the alleyway initially. He kind of just, like, sauntered back until he actually saw what happened. Then he started panicking.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess in the moment it's a combination of, like, I'm still mad and I don't know why you screamed. Maybe you saw a spider.
Yeah, he could have just been screaming out of frustration. It's cause for concern enough to go back, sure, but, you know, still mad.
I walked by this weirdo who just took a fucking bite out of ice. With his front teeth like a monster.
Wait, did he?
Yes.
I did not see that.
Just fucking takes a bite out of a chunk of ice.
I only noticed him.
He's terrible and I hate him. Actually, you now have me wondering if he did do that this episode. I know he does it at least once.
Well, you're going back to find Kyrie's scream so you can double check.
Oh, yeah.
I need to see a picture of this.
Mm-hmm. It's horrible. I hate it.
He's the real monster. Yeah, the rest of the Ganglars look kind of freaky, but, like, this guy eats ice. What the hell?
Just with his front teeth.
Ooh.
Did you get a chill just saying it? Also, when your power is to freeze people, eating ice is kind of sinister.
Oh, God. Like, best case scenario, it's a power play.
I want to say so much about this Ganglar and the Lupin Rangers backstories, but we don't know enough yet, so I have to hold off. But fucking get ready next episode. So I'll be able to say some things, finally. With that, I'm out of points to discuss. Did you have anything that you wanted to go into greater detail on?
Other than just, like, predictions, I don't think so.
Alright, you're not allowed to predict anything in the next episode.
Oh, yeah, I know what's going to happen
Don't
in the
be an
next
ass.
episode. But I'm actually, like, super interested in the fact that, like, Umika was one of the only people to actually see that, because she's usually the most, like, not calm person of the group, but, you know, she's cheery, she's, you know, she isn't that aggro, but, like...
Yeah, she doesn't have the blood feud.
The fact that she probably would have, like, the best, recognition of that particular Ganglar, I think is gonna be kind of interesting. I feel like they might even subvert her personality a bit, because she might not be aggro, but she knows the person who killed her friend.
Mm-hmm.
Kyrie might. He didn't take that much notice of him. But Tuma, despite being the most aggro, has not seen him, so...
And like, Kyrie has revisited that moment every day of his life since then.
Mm-hmm.
So that little glimpse he saw, he's very familiar with. Uh, any other predictions?
I don't
I
think so.
say again, this is not a show that lends itself well to predictions.
Yeah. I mean, obviously
It's a
there's just
little...
going to be stuff that's brought up later. Like, obviously at some point we're going to learn more about why Kyrie was arguing with his brother. Like, that's not a prediction. That's
Mhm.
just, this is a mystery now. They will mention it later.
How long do you think it's going to be before we get more information on the Power Rangers?
uh, hmm. Probably not terribly long. Like, I'd imagine we'll start seeing more once the Pat Rangers actually start getting, like, more dedicated episodes, because I feel this was a mostly Lupin Rangers episode, even though there were very distinct points at which it was like, hey, Pat Rangers, they do things.
And like I said, you can get glimpses into their characters.
Yeah.
And when I say glimpses, I don't mean the obvious things of like Sakia being terrified of dying during the Zord chase. Like that's not a glimpse. That's just a character trait. That's just obvious.
Yep.
But I mean things of like Keishiro hating the feeling of helplessness. You can infer that from his actions in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
How he's like already a little more okay with the Lupin Rangers,
Yep.
just because they're on the same level now.
Tsukasa just being fucking tired. I'm sure that's a thing.
Tsukasa is lawful tired. And with that, I think we have run out of things to say about the second episode.
Yep.
If you want to follow us on Twitter, we are at LRVSPR. I have my Twitter back because I'm weak and bored, and I love destroying my mental health, so I'm back on Twitter. I'm at Lokamasi. I realize it's kind of a cliche to be like, oh, don't follow me, but like, really, I'm not going to tweet anything. I'm just here to read other tweets. Fefner, do you want to plug your Twitter?
Yep, I'm at Fefner Masamune. I'm probably going to be named Fluffy Hellbore, at least for another month, but then guess what? After that, it's October. You better believe I'm going to be the Dancing Pumpkin Man in a month.
And I don't think we need to plug all of our YouTubes again.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff. You can
You've
find it all
listened.
somewhere.
You've listened to the first episode.
Go to LP Zone. You might find a lead there if you want. There's a lot of
What
stuff
I
on there.
totally forgot to mention was that we have an email account I bothered to set up, and no one's emailed it because I didn't put it in the episode like a chump. The episode is just LupinRecap versus PatReview at gmail.com. You can email us if you have something you want us to read. But if you want to guest on an episode, email us. And if we don't know you personally, send us something else you've been in so we can judge whether or not we want you on our podcast. Not to be mean, because I don't think we're going to have that kind of a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But if it would just be helpful to us if you would send, like, hey, I've been on this, listen to this and see if you'd like me on. Unless you know us personally. If we've already been in your thing or you've been in ours, just ask.
Yeah.
We're cool. We're only two people. We're going to run out of things to say eventually. We'll need new blood at some point. With that, there's no idea when the next episode is going to be, because I am in a stressful situation.
Yeah. I'm hoping for every other week if we can manage, but of course, Loga's
That would
heavy
be
into
nice.
school, so like there's no guarantee of that.
I think after October, I might be able to get to a faster schedule. But since we've already seen the third episode, we might be able to get the next one up sooner, but no promises.
Yep.
But whenever it's up, that's where we'll see you next. So until then, adieu.
Adieu. Adieu.